Sarah and John had been married for 5 years. Sarah was a kind-hearted woman who loved her husband deeply. She cooked his favorite meals, made sure his clothes were ironed, and always greeted him with a smile when he came home. John, on the other hand, was a charming and handsome man. He worked at a big office in the city and always said, "I have everything I need because of you, Sarah." But lately, things started to change. John began coming home late from work. He often said, "I have a lot of meetings," or "The boss is keeping me busy." Sarah believed him because she trusted him completely. But one night, while cleaning the house, Sarah found something strange. There was a receipt for a dinner at a fancy restaurant. The date on the receipt was from last week, but John had told her he was working late that night. Sarah's heart started to race. Why didn't he tell me about this dinner? She wondered. She tried to ignore the thought, telling herself, maybe it was a business meeting. But deep inside, a small voice whispered, "Something is not right." The next day, while John was at work, Sarah decided to call his office. A woman answered the phone and said, "Oh, John, he's not here right now. He left early today." Sarah felt confused. John had told her he had an important meeting that evening. When John came home, Sarah looked at him and asked, "How was work today?" John smiled and said, "It was a long day, but I'm glad to be home now." Sarah tried to smile back, but her heart was heavy. Late that night, Sarah couldn't sleep. She stared at the ceiling, wondering what John was hiding. "Is he lying to me?" she thought. Tears rolled down her cheeks as she whispered to herself, "I need to find out the truth." The next day, Sarah made a decision. She would follow John after work. She wanted to know where he went and who he was meeting. Her heart was breaking, but she knew she needed answers. The next evening, Sarah put on her coat and waited outside John's office. Her hands were shaking, and her heart was pounding in her chest. She kept telling herself, "I need to know the truth, no matter how much it hurts." At 6 p.m., Sarah saw John leave the office, but he wasn't alone. He was walking with a beautiful woman. They were laughing and talking as they walked down the street together. Sarah felt like someone had taken a knife and stabbed her heart. Tears filled her eyes, but she followed them quietly. John and the woman entered a small cafe. They sat at a corner table, looking happy and relaxed. Sarah stood outside the window, watching them. She couldn't believe her eyes. John reached out and held the woman's hand. He smiled at her in a way that Sarah hadn't seen in months. Sarah couldn't stand it anymore. She opened the door and walked straight to their table. "John," she said loudly, her voice trembling with anger and pain. John looked up, shocked. His face turned pale. "Sarah? What are you doing here?" he stammered. Tears streamed down Sarah's face. "I trusted you, John. I gave you everything. And this is how you repay me?" she cried. The woman sitting with John looked embarrassed and quickly left the cafe. John tried to explain. "It's not what you think, Sarah. I was going to tell you." Sarah cut him off. "Don't lie to me again, John. I saw everything. I don't need your excuses." For a moment, John sat silently, staring at the table. Then he finally admitted, "You're right, Sarah. I betrayed you. I don't deserve you." Sarah wiped her tears and stood tall. "You're right. You don't deserve me. I gave you my love, my trust, and my life. But now, I'm taking it all back." She turned and walked out of the cafe, leaving John sitting alone. As she walked down the street, Sarah felt a strange mix of emotions: pain, anger, and a small spark of hope. She whispered to herself, "I don't need someone who doesn't value me. I deserve better." From that day on, Sarah started a new chapter in her life. She focused on her happiness, surrounded herself with people who loved and respected her, and learned to smile again. And as for John, he was left with nothing but regret, realizing too late what he had lost. Sometimes, the hardest thing to do is to let go of someone you love. But walking away from pain is the first step toward finding happiness again.